That's right. Let's get it. Hello. Welcome to another episode of All Emotion. I'm your host, Jake. We got Scarcity on this 4th of July weekend coming up.
Yes,
Scarcity,
sir.
how we
Yes, sir.
doing?
What's going on? What's going on? Doing fantastic, amazing. Shout out to all the fans and listeners. We love you. And let's get started.
Are you ready for this 4th of July weekend, Scarcity?
Yes, sir. You know, I got the family here, so we'll be enjoying all the festivities and the fireworks. So happy
It's awesome.
4th to everybody out there.
Yeah, happy 4th of July to everybody. Happy Independence Day to everybody. Well, thanks this gentleman, met him a few weeks ago on the Clubhouse as we speak about great, powerful story. Glad to have him on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, David Williamson. How we doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Thanks for that excited intro.
Hey man, we do what we can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We do what we can. I appreciate your no, number one, Scar City and I just want to number one, thank you for being I'm glad we were able to turn this around so quickly and you being flexible and patient. So thank you.
Oh, no problem, man.
So, want to just get right into it. If you would like to share just a little bit about who you are, what you do now, and we'll just get right into it.
All right. I'm David Williamson. I grew up in North Carolina. My father was in the military, Army brat, moved around. Had a really strange experience as an adult that has a lot of people reaching out. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. So I'm just excited to share, a little bit more about my life and that spiritual experience that kind of led me to just really change how I view what being a human being even means and how to live on this planet even, it just opened my eyes really. So I'm looking forward to just sharing more of that with you guys today.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, sir. So like I said, we get right into it. In your experience, like I said, growing up in Yanceyville, North Carolina.
All right. Yeah, Yanceyville is a really small town, but maybe like when I was there, it's probably less than 3,000 people. I think now it's maybe close to 4,000 people, 3,000 and something, still. But everybody I knew, a lot of the people I knew, a lot of people I was related to, as far as in the immediate community where I grew up. It was like, for me, a very wooded area, a lot of trees, forests. I had a lot of springs and little streams and stuff that I used to swim, just play in and get crawfish, catch fish in. Like, it was like Huckleberry Finn for real, like a nature, really close to nature. And I really, really enjoyed that. I climbed, played in trees, climbed trees, went to sleep in trees even, the woods. We had, there was some vines in this one particular area that we played in a lot that literally looked like a jungle gym. And so we had like a swing set made out of the vines. We climbed up and down on that jungle gym of vines often. It was just, pretty magical childhood, to be honest, for the most part, as far as what me and my cousins and my brother and all the stuff that we did, my best friends, David Watlington is one of my closest friends. He's passed. But we just stayed in the woods. We played around. We played a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to transition here a little bit into the second question, David. Growing up in Yanceyville, I understand, and I said to you before on our call that my family's from Kinston, which is actually, I looked at it on the map, and it's actually 2 hours south of Yanceyville. So I can imagine, the things that you've experienced there because the things that my grandma told me growing up there. What was it like, growing up and seeing like the Ku Klux Klan walking down Main Street? Like, how did that make you feel?
Yeah, that stuff was scary, and I think for me, the biggest scary part of it was looking at the emotions, of everybody that was there, like seeing my family respond to it, my aunts, my mother, just the anger that they were expressing, like, and I was seeing this, and I'm probably, as early as 5, all the way, maybe the last time I may have seen it may have been a little bit older than 5 or 6, but just looking up at them and seeing that anger, it just kind of informed me. It kind of, it gave me a little education. Like, this is how you respond to this stuff. You feel when they give you this kind of hate or this kind of display, I guess, of supposed to be hate, because I didn't even understand what the sheets and all that stuff really was, But when you are presented with what is supposed to be hate, you just respond with hate. Even, you know, in my mind, it was almost like, even if you don't even understand fully, if they hate you, hate them back, you know. And it just, that was like kind of the beginning of me kind of getting socialized into this this whole I'm supposed to hate them, you know, kind of orientation.
No, absolutely. And that kind of is a perfect segue to my next question, which my next question is, you know, people often say that anger and trauma is the result of, you know, someone being raised in a single family household. But from speaking with you, you were raised with both parents, but then you were still angry, which that kind of perplexed me. So what are your thoughts on like why the youth is so angry and violent? You have any insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it could be, you know, the absence of one um, parent or another, but this society, I mean, it polarizes opinions and thoughts so expertly. I mean, you can, if you looked at the American news, you would think that no white people are ever killed by police. You would think that.
Right. Yep.
But it's probably twice as many white people are killed by police than African Americans. And, you know, they make up five more, you know, in the population, five more times the population of black people than white, than, you know, than we, you know, their population is five times greater than ours. So statistically, it should be five times more, you know, white people getting killed by police, but that's not the case. It's twice as many, but that's enough to where they should be just as mad about this type of issue as we are. But because news only seems to spread this narrative that we are the ones that this is happening to, and it seems to be suggesting that it's because we exhibit some unique kind of anger that makes this more likely. You know, that's what I'm seeing is none of that is true. So part of the anger stuff, a lot of it is just polarized. It's just because we're giving a script that we're supposed to think a certain way about this place. And we just, most people, and I was one of these people included, we accept this narrative that we're given, or we accept a narrative from the narratives that we have to choose from, and we run with it, even when our reality contradicts the narrative that we're trying to that we've accepted.
And that's like an example of like how the media is taking things and running with it. And it's not really like that. Me growing up in New York City, I know that there's things that happen to people of all races and nationalities. It's not just black. However, we know that there has always been an agenda, right, to kind of paint a picture to the greater part of America. To your point, you know, America is approximately 70% white or Caucasian, right? So we know that there are other statistics. It's just not shown, right? So yeah, that we could go into a whole nother topic about that. But I think I want to hand it over to Jacob.
Yes, sir. No, I appreciate it. Yes, no. A Dave, you and I and Scarcity spoke about this on the Discovery call, and we kind of joke around, but I definitely could have recorded that and put it out and put that piece out. And I'm really, passionate about that. You know, you and I spoke about me being in the military and combat, and spoke about some of your family being in the military as well. And, Scar City, growing up in New York City, experiencing that whole street life before he transitioned over to, changing his life. So wanted to know, and just definitely wanted to reiterate that conversation we had about that, was about those life experiences that you and I in Scar City experienced, be it trauma, pain, and anger. And the question is to you: do you believe that someone that has been through some of that trauma, and like what I shared with you in Scar City, and you shared with us, could be more clairvoyant?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of almost like, just facetiously speaking, like in the X-Men movies, where they traumatize the people that they thought could have had those powers, and then that is what actually made the powers become evident. It's similar to that. It's like, and even when you read about Kundalini, you read about all these different energies that reside in us that once activated, it changes our spiritual disposition. Some of the ways in which those spiritual energies are activated are happenstance. You might ate some food that caused some kind of reaction in you. You fell on your back, bumped your head. Anything could cause those types of awakenings, but definitely trauma. And the reason why I would say it's trauma is because what the trauma does to you. The trauma does it changes your brain. It changes your nervous system. And I think once you once those parts of the brain have been stimulated in such for so long and at such extreme levels for so long, they either burn out or they become down regulated. So it's the people who are traumatized to extremes, and perhaps sometimes even not to such great extremes, but for extended periods of time, that oftentimes, to me, end up developing some kind of ability as a result of, if it's because of trauma, it's those people who have it to such extremes and sustained amounts of times to where the particular nervous system part, or the part of the brain that's responsible for that area, it gets burned out, and it just changes how they view things, you know.
Absolutely.
And they become aware of gifts. It might not even been that it's new. It's just that the distracting part, that the pain was creating such a distraction that they weren't aware of the gift, and now that part is burnt out.
Yeah, self-awareness is important. Having a knowledge of self is important. Knowing the inner self, knowing how you operate, right? Not just like in our physical and mental, but the astral body, right? Understanding that you have a unique experience. And I would like for you to share with the All Emotion audience, like, what was your out-of-body experience like when your heart stopped beating for 6 minutes?
Yeah, it was, I mean, as I was dying, I'll say, as I was dying, it was like a machine was malfunctioning. Like my vision wasn't normal. My eyes probably were closed, but what I could see was blackness. But where the people were standing, it was just dots of light, you know? So it's like my vision wasn't, like the body was just kind of stopping, like was shutting down. And in that process, it was like everything was changing. But then I hopped out of my body and was looking down at my body while they were working on me, trying to defibrillate me and bring me back to life. All of that immediately, once I got out of my body, it was like instant clarity. It was like, oh yeah, he's dead. He used to be there. His mind, his body, and his ego was dead. And the next kind of logical question that I kind of came to me within myself was, well, what am I now? Like, what's remains? The words that kind of poured into me were like spirit, soul, awareness, energy, light. And I understood, you know, I wasn't sad about seeing my body being worked on in that way, or being not responsive in that way. I was just watching it. I was really disconnected from it. There was no sadness for me. But when I looked in the back left of the room where they were working on me, there was a woman, and she was holding her face with both of her hands. That bothered me because she was really distraught, you know, really sad that I was dying. And but what I was feeling didn't really fit that emotion. So what I wanted to tell her is that, you know, this is beautiful. You shouldn't feel that way. What's happening to me is beautiful. I'm not confused about this. I'm not hurting. There is no death as we think about it. It just not, it isn't occurring. I never at any point lost awareness. And I wanted to tell her that. So and then at one point I just looked up at the ceiling, and then I was gone. I was in space. And initially, as I was coming up into space, it was like a moment where everything was extremely black, tangible blackness. It's almost like I could touch it and feel it, and it was alive. It was aware. It was I've heard people refer to it in different ways, but it definitely, some of the ways I've heard are very poetic and beautiful, because it feels like velvet, and to a certain extent, the blackness is blacker than space. That's what I've experienced. And so when I came up out of that blackness and looked down into it, it took on like, kind of like a different quality, but it might have just been the quality that I was experiencing while I was in it. It was just how it looked from coming out of it and looking from it from above. But the blackness still was blacker than space. But when I looked into it, it felt like everything was there. All answers, all questions, all possibility for reality existed in that black space. And if I had any moment where there was any kind of tension or confusion, if I looked in that black space as well, that confusion was gone. And it was instantaneous, almost before even I could even fully articulate any confusion or question. The confusion was gone if I looked into that black space. And the only thing that really happened in that black space is that sometimes there were little movements like twirls and stuff like that, but there was nothing major happening. It was just me looking into it and seeing the minor movements. The answers were in those movements. But I also saw a lot of stuff in space, like just random stuff, like not even, I didn't see any other spirit or any other a relative that had passed before me. I didn't see anything like that. This was really just me in a beautiful, vast space. But I could see star forming regions, which were like these areas where literally the stars are created. And they have these colorful clouds, dark blue, light. It goes from dark blue to light blue to white, and then it's red to pink to white. It just kind of radiated down into these lighter colors. And then there was white clouds, and in the midst of all these, you see faint stars. Like they're not super bright, but they're faint, like they're forming. And I watched that for a while because it was just beautiful, and it felt like it just felt beautiful. It felt like I was watching the birth of stars. It felt something like something really important was happening, and it was and I was enjoying watching that. But beyond that, I looked at the void a lot, and I started looking forward and looking at other things that were kind of just moving through space. And one thing I saw looked to be like a red rock, and that's all it was. It didn't feel alive like stars, or it didn't feel alive at all. It just felt like a rock. And when I kind of asked within myself what it was, the distance between me and that thing just disappeared. And I was on the other side of it looking back at it, and I could tell that it was literally just that, a red rock. And when I came back and I Googled all that stuff, it was an asteroid. That's how they define it, because they appear red oftentimes in space, and it may have something to do with whether they're coming towards Earth or going away from Earth or something. I heard some language about that as well. But even the light, I saw the light too, but it was very far away from me, and it was like kind of up into the right, and the emergency room where I was being defibrillated and worked on was down into the left. And that was always an interesting thing to me, that it was laid, that it kind of looked that way, like a 90-degree angle. The light was up into the right, and the emergency room was down into the left. It was like a 90-degree angle, and it was that part always intrigued me, and I always mention it because some people might understand that as a reference to some images in different ancient texts or ancient monuments, because in Egypt they show these 90-degree angles often, and they refer to it as a means of leaving or changing dimensions or something to that effect. I'm not 100% certain if that's the exact same reference I should be looking at to understand this, but it seems to help.
Very interesting. And you have a truly intriguing story, and I know a lot of people want to hear about this. And before we go to the next question, one of the things I want to say, just kind of off of that question, is when you came back into your body, did you experience any of the ability that you had when you were at this elevated space and elevated consciousness? Were you able to, and that's one question. And that next one is, have you ever had any dreams about that happening to you since this happened?
Yeah, when I came back, I could say that, and this was more torturous than it was like, wow, I got this new ability. I could feel other people. I was always pretty empathic, and I could kind of feel other people, but it was more just annoying. It was just noise most of the time to me before. When I came back after the near-death experience, the feeling other people's stuff was so extreme that I viewed it as torture. Before, and being an empath was annoying. Now it was torture because I couldn't. It wasn't easy to distinguish between all of this noise. It was other people's energy and feelings and thoughts, and I didn't really understand it, And but what happened over time with even that is that maybe it stabilized, because I was for 3.5 years I was deeply depressed, so there was no deep revelations, that were coming from the near-death experience, except for personal stuff, because I really wasn't sharing it with other people. I was kind of in my head, maybe trying to figure stuff out, but I really wasn't healing. I was still angry. I was very depressed, and and now I wanted to go back there because now I had exposure to that place. So being here now really wasn't where I wanted to be, because I knew there was somewhere else that I could be, and I wanted to go back there. But but the grounded understanding of that empath stuff became what I would view as a gift. But it took time for me to separate from all of the noise that I had inside of myself that made other people's noise that much more annoying for me to have to deal with. But once I erased my attachment to my own ideologies and my own trauma and my own stories that I'd made up about what was happening to me here, and even identity, attachment to identity, once I dropped all that stuff, then inside of me became silent. It's peaceful all the time. And now when I'm around people and I'm feeling and hearing all of this other stuff, I know it's them and I can help them because it's clear to me. You know.
That's interesting. I was going to ask you a follow-up question to that. Have you, experienced anyone else that has gone through that or something similar? I know you're on Clubhouse. Have you experienced that with anyone else? Or have you talked to anyone else that has experienced that?
They don't really describe the empath stuff the way I describe it. A lot of people, when they describe that type of thing, it's still kind of, in my opinion, it sounds kind of right brain. It sounds like they have the capacity that a lot of people just don't. They can be in this unorganized information space, this vast ancient information space, these old brain circuits, information space, and they can pull stuff out of it just because they may be very well just gifted in that way. I don't know. But for me, when I describe what empathy is for me now, it's exactly what I just described. It's me not having an attachment to, and me pouring all of those ideas that I had been attached to before out of me, and then pouring other people's identities into me, feeling it completely and utterly through inside of myself. And then the feedback is still theirs because it's them, it's their ideas that's poured into me. My nervous system isn't overly charged by these ideas and information because it's not my experience. So the feedback that I give them, even though it's their feedback and it's strictly their feedback because it's their information, it's being processed in a body that isn't attached to the experience. So it's not clouded feedback. It's feedback that comes from somebody that is clear, So I've learned to be able to just say certain things to people that's really specific to them that I don't even really understand because it has nothing to do with me, but it comes out of me very clearly now because I'm allowing them to reside in me and their issues to reside in me. And it's not competing with my own nonsense because a lot of my own nonsense, I'm not attached to it anymore.
Dave, that's awesome. Man. I really, 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 really want to say thank you for sharing that, and wanted to know, we asked this on the last few of our interviews, and this is a very tough question, but I believe, you being tapped in like that and having that experience happen to you, what are your thoughts, feelings, the way you view America with all these mass shootings? What do you feel? What do you think about it?
Yeah, man, it's trauma, man. Like if I had an orientation, my anger was so extreme that were it not for something else, some other connectedness that I had, I would have probably been just another one of those mass shooters. I was extremely angry, but I think it's just some of the ideology that we give children before they have the maturation to really process it. It ends up landing in these extreme places in extreme ways. And all it takes is the right trigger as you move through this life for those types of possibilities to become real, especially if you take these ideologies that are running rampant in certain quarters of the world and within certain populations, white, black, everybody. There's always a group of people within any race of people that are a bit more extreme than the average, and they share a lot of things that are centric in terms of culturally, tribally centric. And all it takes is the right situation for someone within that particular tribe it becomes almost like a sense of responsibility that they have to act on because their tribe is being unfairly singled out or attacked by others. So it doesn't take a whole lot for them to take that type of thought. Then exposure to guns in this country is crazy. And you can get a gun anywhere, so to go from unbalanced thinking to having access to a gun, to actually using a gun, none of that is far-fetched in this country. It's easy, because we all are entertaining so much polarized thought, and the TV is polarizing racial thought and racial narratives with the way that they present all of the happenings here. And it's creating a powder keg, to where all it takes is the right situation for someone to just feel like they have to do something to protect their tribe, or to do something to make a statement about how painful things are here. And oftentimes when you hear their logic, they're not coming from a place. Sometimes even the letters that they leave, if they end up committing suicide, it still seems as though they were hurt and they were doing something out of some sense of responsibility in response to something extreme, and some of them may just very well be mentally ill. And that happens in a society like this too, where all of the thoughts are polarized so much by, I don't know, man. It's like, here's one thing that I won't do, because it does create unnecessary anxiety, is that when you start talking about theys and others, when you center those as it relates to you trying to figure out what's going on in your life, if you have these magical days and these omniscient and omnipresent days and others everywhere, it's going to be difficult for you to be able to imagine your problems and imagine solutions to your problem in any kind of sound way, because they and others don't exist. It's you, and there are decisions that are being made around you that affect you, that you may not be able to participate in because of your circumstances. And you might feel some kind of way about those decisions that you're not participating in that affected you. But if those decisions are being made by people who have children and wives and some kind of sense of responsibility too, then those decisions reflect probably a large percentage of this population. They probably do, right? And if you can look at that as I just happen to be in a population that doesn't look at this particular decision favorably, but maybe another topic we'll agree on, versus responding solely to the things that you don't agree on and turning these politicians into demons and the devils, and it just becomes a thing where you can't have a rational conversation about how to address an issue, or how to speak with politicians, or to talk about these things in a rational way. And that's what's happening a lot.
That's a very, very interesting point. And I want to ask you something about that. You going through what you have gone through and coming back out on the other side, and you're here, you're alive and breathing with the living. Do you believe in a higher power now? Or has that experience led you to believe that, there is not a higher power? How do you feel now?
Yeah, it's really complicated, because I believe that there's so much more to this experience than we can imagine. So to distill it down to, is there a one God that runs it all, or one energy that is over it all, or not? Like, it becomes a thing where there is one force that seems to be governing the bulk of this experience, that seems to be holding it together, and it feels like a very tangible force. And the closest thing to describing that is love, right? But if God is love, which a lot of people suggest, that seems to be somewhat scripturally sound in certain, cultures, then I would have to say, yes, I do believe in God, because if God is love, or if God is hope, or something like that, and the capacity for us it's like an infectious kind of feeling that once you have it in you, you really can't behave any other way. And if that feeling and that connectedness to this entire system, because it's God, then yes, I believe in that. But I think being connected to it all, you don't have these local centric perspectives anymore. So if I say I believe in God, then I can't say that it's my God and it's the God of people who only like and think like me and look like me, and it's protecting us, and everybody else are not under the law of God because they're not of God. Like, I can't, if I believe in God and there is a God, then it's all about God. I can't make up a story that says that I'm special and nobody else is. I'm chosen and nobody else is. So all of those concepts that seem to go hand in hand sometimes with belief in God, those are, to me, I can do without those. But as far as us all being a part of this thing that we call God, or us all being God, or love being God, and we all having the capacity to engage God through love or in love, then that to me all makes sense, because it makes us all equal under God. Yeah, no, I think this it goes back to what I was saying earlier about even trying to answer a question about there being a single or one type of God out there somewhere. The manner in which we sometimes just wake up or get plugged into that God or to that love is so crazy, because I've read and in holy text from ancient times to speak about soldiers in the middle of war becoming enlightened. I mean, you can look at the Bhagavad Gita, from India. There's so many warriors who became enlightened in the midst of war. And so, and I there's a friend of mine named Zach who's a war fighter, high level, trained high level, trained Rangers. He's high level skills and perspective of war fighting. Like his perspective of war fighting is very high level. And so talking to him, and I even shared with him your experience, Jake, and he said, "Yeah, I've heard other soldiers have that exact same experience." And he said he's even known of soldiers who controlled that ability to leave their body and do reconnaissance with their awareness on the other side of a ridge. So and it goes back to the trauma. It goes back to the extreme circumstances that our nervous system and brain and body gets exposed to. That seems to somehow make these capacities come online, make us connect in certain ways, or break certain parts of our physical body that then gives us access to this other thing, this spiritual thing, or this energetic thing. So to me, and then when you think about the trauma that goes with war fighting, the trauma that goes with living in the inner city, the trauma that goes with racism, the trauma that goes with being an abused housewife, even, it's all the same. It affects the nervous system in very similar ways. And so for me, talking to war fighters, talking to prisoners who go through these traumatic experiences inside of prisons, all of it is the same conversation. And what heals it all is love. It's somebody seeing you, somebody loving you, and somebody understanding where you are and kind of bringing you back to the center so that you don't have to reside way over in the deep end or way over in the shallow end. You can actually get back to some place where you can function and some place where you feel whole. And I think that this country doesn't deal with war fighters well. It doesn't deal with prisoners well. It doesn't deal with abused women well. It doesn't deal with inner city children well. And that's all of the trauma. That's all of the traumatized populations. This country doesn't seem to deal with it well, but it's damn good at dishing it out. It's damn good at dishing out trauma and creating dynamics where people experience trauma and defining and deciding that we got to go to a war or something and sending children and young men over to fight in a war. It's damn good at all of that. But as far as handling the fallout from all of these characteristics that this society seems to center and put us all through, it ain't really good at handling that. And that's to me, the importance of centering the soldiers and what they have to endure when they come back from these places and they're traumatized and they end up on drugs, they end up on these other things, and then we look at them like they were always broken. And it's like, no, they weren't. No, they weren't. No, they weren't. It's what they've been through. It's what they've been through. And if we don't see this stuff and start trying to address it all in a similar kind of way, then we're not having the right conversation. We all are traumatized, and it takes healing for us to see each other properly and start coming to real solutions. Anger, in my most angry moments, I didn't see solutions as I couldn't come up. You can't fix problems when you're blinded by anger. I had to heal first.
Thank you, Dave. Wow, man, I cannot wait for that special guest and you to come through and just drop bombs. Just drop the bombs, man. That was incredible. We really appreciate you, sir, and all your time, and all of you for tuning in. Be sure, like I said, to tune in next week for episode 2. And please subscribe to our mailing list. We get free newsletters, new episodes that come out, and free stuff. And yes, we want one more thing. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a second, we have your emails on there below both our profiles. Please give Dave and I some feedback. We really want to know how we're doing. And we've been doing it here for a minute, and we really want to reach more and want to help a lot more people. So, again, thank you all. Thank you again, Dave, for coming out. And I want to say